So another big week is unfolding on Capitol Hill as House lawmakers prepare to hold a full vote on impeachment before they break for the holidays. Just last night, the House Judiciary Committee released its 658-page report on impeachment. So Nancy Cordes joins us now from Capitol Hill to talk a little bit more about that, but also what's next in the process. Nancy, you know, I think a lot of people watching this have seen hearing after hearing after hearing, and they're wondering, where do we go from here? So what's next?
So what's next is that the House Rules Committee will hold a hearing tomorrow to lay out all the procedures for the full House vote on Wednesday. We do expect that Democrats will prevail in that Wednesday vote, even though some House Democrats still haven't said how they're going to vote. Tulsi Gabbard of Hawaii, for example, said last night she's still going to review the evidence before she makes up her mind. Democratic leaders, however, are confident, and they are already looking ahead to the next phase, the Senate trial.
I think this whole thing is a crock.
Senate Republicans ready to defend the president are signaling they prefer a speedy trial with no new witnesses.
I am ready to vote on the underlying articles.
But Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer sent a letter to Majority Leader Mitch McConnell last night detailing the witnesses and timeline Senate Democrats want to see. He proposes that Chief Justice John Roberts, who will preside over the trial, issue subpoenas to 4 administration officials, including acting White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney and former National Security Advisor John Bolton, who were both asked to testify in the House impeachment inquiry but did not appear. In a statement, McConnell's office responded that the majority leader has made it clear that he plans to meet with Leader Schumer to discuss the contours of a trial soon.
I'm going to coordinate with the president's lawyers.
McConnell and the White House are coordinating on strategy.
We wouldn't be doing our job if we weren't working hand in hand with the Senate to clear the president of this charade, this sham.
On Sunday, Democrats accused McConnell of violating his duty to serve as an impartial juror.
Here you have the majority leader of the Senate, in effect the foreman of the jury, saying he's going to work hand in glove with the defense attorney. That's a violation of the oath that they're about to take, and it's a complete subversion of the constitutional scheme.
Republicans argued it's the House process that was unfair.
I think this is the beginning of the end for this show trial that we've seen in the House.
Conservative groups see impeachment as a winning issue for them. They're targeting House Democrats in 31 congressional districts that President Trump won in 2016, including New Jersey's Geoff Van Drew, a conservative Democrat facing a tough re-election, who's expected to switch parties after being wooed personally by President Trump.
Well, Nancy, that's an interesting little nugget there. I had not heard that the president reached out specifically to Geoff Van Drew. He's in a district that is supportive of the president. But what more can you tell us about his decision to switch parties? Is it a final decision?
Well, it appears to be final because 5 or 6 members of his staff resigned last night. They said in a letter that his decision to switch to the GOP, quote, does not align with the values we brought to this job. He met with the president or spoke with him on Friday, and we don't know exactly when he is going to formally switch parties, but we anticipate it will be later this week. Now, Van Drew was in an interesting situation because he had come out fairly early on against impeachment, and that really angered some in his own party, including some of the Democratic groups who helped him get across the finish line in his New Jersey district, which, as you pointed out, was a tough district for him. So they were already pulling their support of him, and he may have felt that switching to the GOP might be his best shot at holding on to this seat because he's already facing some serious Democratic challengers in his primary.
All right, so chances are he might have been one of those people voting in the House against impeachment if he was remained a Democrat. But before Wednesday's full House vote on impeachment, the House Rules Committee is expected to be holding a hearing. That's going to happen tomorrow morning. So how will that hearing play into the vote on Wednesday?
Well, as the name of the committee alludes, the committee basically sets up the rules for any particular debate and vote. So that committee will establish, for example, how much time the House spends debating impeachment before it goes ahead and votes. Typically, for a piece of legislation, you might see a debate that lasts an hour or two. They may decide that on an issue of this significance that the debate will actually last longer before the House goes ahead and votes. And I'm sure you're going to hear some Republicans argue that the bipartisanship on this issue is on their side, not the Democrat side, because we don't anticipate that any Republicans will vote yes, but it's looking likely that there will be at least a small handful of Democrats who vote no. And you'll hear Republican after Republican, I suspect, point to that Van Drew example as a sign that this vote is politically risky for the Democratic Party.
So meantime, the Senate and senators have already started weighing in on the trial that will probably happen in the new year. Mitch McConnell has already said that he's working closely with the White House. I'm wondering, what's the benefit, the political benefit for Mitch McConnell when it comes to working closely with the White House? This is a Congress that's already been accused of failing in its oversight role, and here he is sort of saying, yeah, we're working with the White House on this.
I think it is meant to send a signal to the denizen of the White House, Donald Trump, to say to Trump, who has, really pushed for a big, robust trial with new witnesses, to send a signal to him, hey, look, Republicans here in the Senate are working with your lawyers. Anything we do, we have coordinated with your own people. You don't have to worry that we're going rogue, that we're not doing what you want. We are doing this in concert with your lawyers, because we know that there is an effort underway to try to convince President Trump not to push for a longer trial. So frankly, I think when you hear McConnell say that, it's really meant for an audience of one. It's really meant to say to the president, hey, look, we're working together here. If we say that this should be a shorter trial, there's a reason for that.
Okay, but still, so much for the idea of sort of an independent trial that's, not connected to the White House. I'm wondering, how has this worked in the past? When it came to Bill Clinton, did Congress work closely with the White House? I know it would have been different then, because you had a Republican-dominated Congress and a Democratic president.
Right. And so that's the first point. The second point is that the Democratic and Republican leaders back in 98, 99 actually sat down and hammered out an agreement for how this was going to go. And while the Senate's Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says the same thing is going to happen this time around, we really haven't seen that coordination yet, which is why Minority Leader Chuck Schumer fired that initial salvo last night, sending that letter to McConnell saying, okay, you're starting to say that you don't want any witnesses. Actually, we as Democrats feel that there should be witnesses, and here's who they are. And beyond that, here's how long we think they should be questioned, and here's when we think the Senate trial should begin, et cetera, et cetera. It was really Democrats staking out their initial negotiation position and waiting to hear back from McConnell. Allies of McConnell's did point out that back during the Clinton impeachment, Schumer actually voted against having new witnesses in the Senate. So, so the tides have certainly turned here, and it just gives you a little flavor of the fight that is to come, because this Senate trial is such an amorphous process, and it can be so heavily influenced by Democratic and Republican leaders, and so this is going to be an argument that plays out throughout the holiday recess until we get back.
So I know many people have said that the outcome of the Senate trial is a foregone conclusion, but you at least have to make it appear as if you're going through the motions, right? I mean, is there a possibility that there could be witnesses called just for the sake of appearances?
You don't have to make it appear that way if you have 51 votes on your side, and that's really the key. If McConnell can get 51 of his 53 Republicans to agree with him that they don't need to hear new witnesses, then they could hear an airing of the evidence from the impeachment managers who come over from the House and from White House counsel, and then they could sort of vote to wrap it up. But if even just a couple of Senate Republicans are uncomfortable with that idea, say Mitt Romney of Utah, or Susan Collins of Maine, or Cory Gardner of Colorado, who's got a tough re-election fight coming up in a purple state, then McConnell will have no choice but to either work with the Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer or to hold a vote on whether they should hear from witnesses, and if so, which ones. That's what makes this process so interesting. In the House, Democrats really had a total control. The rules are different in the House. In the Senate, the two sides have to play ball. And here's what makes it even more interesting, Anne Marie, is that Democrats think that the White House, was able to stonewall the House because it could say that the House impeachment inquiry was a sham and it was it's totally unfair process. And that was the excuse the White House gave for not handing over documents and not allowing top officials to testify. They believe it's going to be a lot harder for the White House to make that case when it comes to a Republican-led Senate trial. So they're hoping, and this is a big if, but they're hoping that they might be able to force the White House to hand over more information to the Senate than it did to the House.
Yeah, it does sound like a big if, but you can always hope. Nancy, thank you very much.
You're welcome.